Hi. Welcome back to the Big Ed channel. I know it's been a while, 4 weeks. I know everyone is just clamoring, absolutely fucking clamoring for another Big Ed video. So I'm here today to drop one on your heads. A couple days ago, I saw two different videos where people rank the best 25 films from the last 25 years. That kind of made me realize, holy fuck, we're already a quarter into this fucking century. But more importantly, it got me thinking, what would my favorite film from each year be? So today, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 25 films from each year, starting at 2025 and going back to 2000. We're going to be sharing what I think of my favorite films and what I think are the best films of that year. You know, what film do I personally like the most and what film has probably had the most cultural impact, has, you know, the best filmmaking techniques, and we're going to be ranking them at the end. Starting off at 2025, my favorite film from last year was Frankenstein. I know it's a bit of a hot take because I know it got a lot of hate, some of it justified, but it's one of those films where I'll never forget like my film going experience. I went with a close friend of mine and we both loved it. Jacob Elordi is fucking amazing in it. So many aspects of the film are just really incredible. You know, I think the overall aesthetic and look of the film is really what drives it home in particular. I know there's issues with the script. Me personally, I found a lot of issues with the editing. I think the second half of the film was kind of not horribly paced, but it could have been a lot better. But overall, I fucking loved Frankenstein, but I understand some of the ill will towards it. But I think the best film of that year was one battle after another. You know, I walked out of that film being like, holy fucking shit. Like, that was incredible. And I know it's like divisive, you know, I've seen commentary on both, mainly about the politics of the film, but you know, believe it or not, if you couldn't tell by my voice, I'm not American, so I'm not really that involved in American politics. PTA is one of my favorite directors, and I think One Battle is arguably his best directed film. You know, so many of the aspects are so crisp, clean. I love kind of like this, I don't want to say like neo-desert look, because that sounds a bit wankerish, but like kind of like this almost like postmodernist look at kind of the desert. You know, it's not like rehashing the same kind of look like Breaking Bad did, because, you know, they're both set in New Mexico. But yeah, amazing film, and it's, you know, I think One Battle will serve the test of time as one of PTA's best. 2024, my favorite film was A Real Pain, written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. I kind of feel a couple ways about the film. I love it. I think it's an amazing film. Kieran Culkin, you know, incredible. You know, he was the lead actor. I don't know why the fuck nominated for support. I guess Kieran Culkin wanted to win an Oscar. But great film, great performances. I think the script kind of gets underrated. I think it's I read the fucking script actually, you know, because I was very interested to see how Eisenberg kind of brought it to life. And I think they do it very well. I think the best film from that year, I have Dune Part 2, you know. I think everything that's been said about Dune Part 2 has been said. I'm not going to waste your time. Dune Part 2. Fuck yeah. Now for 2023, I have a tie because I couldn't make up my mind. So my two favorite films were John Wick Chapter 4 and Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I saw it with my father. Fucking incredible film. It's also the best film of that year. I think Oppenheimer is arguably probably my favorite Christopher Nolan film. I'm not one of those guys who think Christopher Nolan is a god, but I think Oppenheimer did for Nolan in particular was, I think it really elevated him to, you know, in the mainstream at least, elevated him to having this status of being one of the most, you know, visionary and prolific directors of our time. You know, before that he was like, you know, kind of known as the Dark Knight guy, you know, Inception, still good movies, but I feel like Oppenheimer really put him up to, you know, the GOAT status, you know, where we're talking about him as one of the best of all time. But John Wick Chapter 4 was amazing. You know, I saw it with a big group of mates, and, you know, I think it's probably the best John Wick. It's between that and the first one. But so many aspects, you know, the cinematography is amazing. Favorite shot films of all time. It's just so many aspects, you know, the action is incredible. The whole Hotline Miami sequence where they do the bird's eye view is fucking amazing. So for 2022, I have my favorite film and the best film are the same. That's The Batman. I think The Batman I think it kind of ushered in a new era of superhero films. It was kind of returned to form. I feel like we kind of had like a Dark Ages period of superhero cinema. And I feel like The Batman kind of brought a lot of that back, especially with DC, with the release of Superman and I think Supergirl next year. But even besides its cultural impact and its impact on, superhero films in the media, it's a really fucking good, like, crime noir film. Gotham City is brought to life so well. And honestly, I put it here, honestly, you could put it there for just the entire fucking Batmobile chase sequence. It's that fucking good. For 2021, my favorite film that came out in 2021 is Judas and the Black Messiah. If you've seen one of my previous videos, I'll put it on screen here. If you've seen one of my previous videos, then you'll probably know exactly why it's one of my favorite films of all time. But it's an incredibly written film. The screenplay is near perfect. Really strong performances from Lakeith Stanfield and especially Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton. There's so many good things about the film. The score is incredible. The score is both haunting and fucking really engaging. I think it elevates a lot of scenes, but I think just honestly the performances, the script, and honestly Shaka King's direction just really make it well. But I think the best film from that year, and this is a hot take, was The Tragedy Macbeth by one of the Coen brothers. I think it was Joel Coen. Just honestly, you don't even have to watch it. Just look at like a cinematography video about it. It is one of the most unique films I've ever seen. I did a lot of Shakespeare in high school, so I could kind of catch on a bit better because it was still fresh in my head because it came out around about the time we were doing Macbeth in high school. And it's an incredible experience watching that film. Now, 2020 was kind of a weird year for film because, obviously COVID. But my favorite film was Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods. Might be my favorite Spike Lee film. I really do like Do the Right Thing. But this just might take the cake. It's a messy film, sure. Like, it's 2.5 hours long, but it only needs to be fucking 2 hours long. But I think the themes, the characters, Delroy Lindo is a fucking powerhouse in that film. That is easily his best film. I even think he did better than he did Sinners, and he was really fucking good at Sinners. But just a really solid film. And, fuck, my phone went dead. Sorry, my favorite film, what I think was the best film was Sound of Metal. Like I said, a bit strapped for choice, but I think Riz Ahmed in that film is one of my favorite performances of all time. Just the anger he exudes that feels so naturalistic. It's hard to pull off being angry as an actor without it feeling over the top. For 2019, my favorite film was Uncut Gems. I think this is the best Safdie film, and I am counting, their solo endeavors in that. I think it's much better than Marty Supreme. I'm quite conflicted on Marty Supreme. That's a conversation for another time. But I think Uncut Gems is easily their best film. Adam Sandler, amazing. Easily, his best acting. Everyone fucking says that. There's not too much to say about this film that hasn't already been said, so I won't bore you. But suffice to say, amazing film. But I do think that the best film of that year, and this is going to come no surprise, is Parasite. It really helped push foreign films into kind of like the mainstream, the Western kind of cultural conversation about film. But it is a perfect film. It's one of those films where it never misses a beat. And this, that's all I have to say about it. For 2018, my favorite film was Hereditary. I'll never forget watching that the first time. I watched it with a family member of mine, and they were shit fucking scared. I kind of already knew what happened at a little bit of it, but it is an incredible film. It really teaches you that every good horror film is also a good drama, and Hereditary is one of the best family dramas as well as one of the best horror films of the modern age. But I think the best film that year was easily Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's, I think, like the three titans of animation, and we'll get to them, but Spider-Verse is definitely one of them. It is, not only is it superbly written, but it definitely pioneered a new form of animation, which is like half 3D, half 2D. I was looking it up and it's like 2.5D. But it's like that shell-shaded comic book style, and I really love that style, especially considering my favorite game is Borderlands. But incredible film from start to finish. So for 2017, both my favorite film and I think the best year of that film is Get Out. In terms of Jordan Peele and his whole discography, I'm a bit mixed. I didn't really like Nope. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I also didn't like Us that much. But I think Get Out is, it is his masterpiece. It's one of the most unique horror films I've ever seen. Now, my favorite film for 2016 was a bit tricky to pick because I hadn't seen too many films released in 2016, but I think Deadpool will probably be my favorite. That might be a bit of a normie pick, but I don't mind superhero films. I was raised on them, like many of you, I assume. And Deadpool felt very unique. It felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air when Marvel was starting to get stale. But I think easily the best one released that year was La La Land. I don't love La La Land, and if you've seen my other video, you'll know exactly why. But it's just a modern classic. It's so rare to get original musicals, and La La Land is just it's a generation-defining film, even if I don't fucking love it. 2015, my favorite film released that year was Ex Machina. Incredible film. The script is amazing. There's so many. It's one of those films where it's hard to put into words. Stay there. It's one of those films where it's hard to put into words just how good it is, but it's easily Alex Garland's best film. I think the best film for that year was The Big Short. I love The Big Short. Amazing script, amazing cast, and it's one of my biggest likes in film. I think one of the most impressive things is when you take something boring, like examining the 2008 global financial crisis, and you make it as interesting as that film did. And I think for that kind of achievement, best film. And I think it has aged really well, especially in online conversation about film. Big Short. 2014 was a hard one because I love a lot of films from 2014. Might be one of my favorite years in cinema. My favorite film was from that, and this probably isn't surprising to anyone, was Whiplash. Whiplash, Damien Chazelle's best film by far. It's not even really that close. The script's good. J.K. Simmons is a powerhouse. Miles Teller's alright. It's not perfect. I think a lot of people deify Whiplash, and it's what's turned me off to it in recent years that I've gotten older. But still incredible film. But I think the best film from that year was Birdman. Alejandro G. Inarritu's Birdman is incredible. From a production standpoint, one of the best scripts of the 2010s. Michael Keaton gives one of the best performances of the 2010s. I'm shocked he didn't win the Oscar for that. But let's move on. Prisoners. 2013. My favorite film was Prisoners. This is one of the most recent films I've watched. What surprised me, though, is that how much of the story of Weapons, released last year, is kind of lifted from Prisoners. And I'm not saying that, Zach Cregger plagiarized in any way, but watching Prisoners retroactively made me think worse of Weapons. That's my issue with it. But Prisoners, amazing film. Gyllenhaal, maybe my favorite Hugh Jackman performance. I love Hugh Jackman, but Jake Gyllenhaal, amazing. The story's amazing. Paul Dano, amazing. But the best film that year was easily The Wolf of Wall Street. Let's not bat around the bush here. All right, it's aged amazingly. It's a fine wine of a film. Still considered Leo's best performance, although I disagree. But amazing film, iconic film. One of those cultural defining films. 2012, my favorite film was Rise of the Guardians. Now, that's just a personal preference. Do I think it is one of the best animated films of all time or something? No, I don't. It's just something I grew up with, very personal connection. But I do like the unique take it has on kind of those, mythological beings almost. So, Santa Claus is Russian, fucking hilarious. The Easter Bunny's Australian, fucking Hugh Jackman plays him. And I think that it's a really solid animated film that kind of gets slept on, to be honest. But I think the best film that year was Django Unchained. I think it's Tarantino's best film, easily. Not easily, but I think it is Tarantino's best film, and it's amazing. Christoph Waltz, Jamie Foxx, arguably Leo's best performance of all time. I think it's top 3. But yeah, 2011, I think my favorite film was Moneyball with written by Aaron Sorkin. Brad Pitt is amazing. I think it really gets slept on as one of his better performances. Jonah Hill's amazing. Just really solid film. But I think the best film there was Drive with with Ryan Gosling. It's amazing. It's incredible, and it is only aged better with time. You know, I think the whole look of it has inspired so much, you know, kind of like that neo-noir aesthetic has done so much. It's one of my personal favorite aesthetics. Like, I love the Hotline Miami franchise, you know. A lot of that game's like aesthetics was inspired by this film. But let's get on to my favorite film of all time, The Social Network, 2010. The Social Network is my favorite film of the year and my favorite film of all time, and it's easily the best. It's a masterpiece from start to finish. You know, everyone says that because it's fucking true. What I think is the best part of the film, if I had to nail it down to any one specific part, would be the editing. The editing, you know, in so many films I see, the editing substitutes certain aspects of the film or holds them up. But I think The Social Network is one of those cases where the editing is in service and enhances so much of the film. Like, the editing complements, you know, the direction, the performances, and the script in particular so fucking well that honestly, it's mesmerizing to watch. And, you know, I revisit it every like fucking 3 months or so just to watch certain sequences because it is that fucking good. But moving on to 2009, my favorite film was Inglourious Basterds. You know, I don't really need to say much. You know, if you've seen the film, then you understand why. But I constantly quote it with friends of mine. It's just, it lives rent-free in my head. But I think the best film, and the film that's probably had the best legacy, was Avatar, the original. Such a unique film, you know, such a unique look, and it's hard to put into words my first time watching it because it is that good. Now, did the sequels stack up? Absolutely not. I still think the first one is the best one, but I think the original has endured the test of time. For 2008, The Dark Knight, favorite and the best film. Do we really need to discuss this? You know, it's 2008. Everyone says The Dark Knight because it is that good. 2007. Now, I was very cut up with this because both my favorite film and my what I think was the best could easily be interswapped. But my favorite film was There Will Be Blood, Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece. I think it's his best film, and certainly Daniel Day-Lewis's best acted film. But my favorite, what I think was the best film was No Country for Old Men. That film is next fucking level. And I was kind of tossing between putting it in my favorite and the best one. But No Country for Old Men is a fucking masterpiece. 2006, both my favorite film and what I think the best film was The Departed. This is another one I'll never forget watching. You know, I was at home with two of my family members and I got a really important email. I was like waiting on the results of, it's like a leadership position in school. And I got it. So I saw the email and I'm like, hey, you got the position. I was like, holy fucking shit! While the fucking ending of The Departed was happening. Amazing film from start to finish. 2005, we have The 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's both my favorite and I think it's the best. 2005 is kind of a weird year. I haven't seen too many films that year, so that's why I was a bit limited on my scope. But The 40-Year-Old Virgin has done so much for comedy films and comedy as a genre that I think it deserves this because it is so funny and so humanistic that it's an unforgettable film. 2004, my favorite film was The Incredibles. I think it's one of the three titans of animation. You know, it's The Incredibles, Spider-Verse, and we'll get to the third one, but I'm sure you can guess what it is. You know, incredible family drama. You know, it's surprisingly mature for a children's superhero animated film, and I love it to death. But I think the best film that year was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is one of those films where its lessons and its themes will fucking stick with you. You know, I think about this film all the time. It's one of my favorites, but I like The Incredibles slightly more. It's one of my favorites of all time because of how much it makes you reflect on your own life. You know, I think that's what Charlie Kaufman, Charlie, we've called Charles. I think that's what Charlie's writing is really good at, is making you reflect on your own life. And I think Eternal Sunshine is probably the best example of that. But 2003, my favorite film was Old Boy, the original, not the fucking remake. Oldboy is a fucking trip and a half. It is so good for so many different reasons. The action is incredible, the story is fucked up, but it is so engaging, and it's never disturbing. I think the best film from that year was easily Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. I don't need to say anything, you know, it's kind of self-explanatory, that one. We got our last three. My favorite film from 2002 was Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. Amazing film, amazing score as well by John Williams. Just, it's a Steven Spielberg film with Tom Hanks. What do you expect? It's really fucking good. And I think the best film from that year was City of God. If you've seen the film, I don't want to say too much because I don't really want to give away anything, but really good film, I do recommend. For 2001, my favorite film was Training Day with Denzel Washington, and a fantastic film. Probably my favorite performance of all time is Denzel Washington in that film. He's amazing, captivating, disturbing from start to finish. Ethan Hawke is really good too, but I think Denzel's definitely the standout. Amazing film, amazing to watch with friends as well, which is always a plus. Amazing all around. I think what was the best film from that year, though, was easily Spirited Away. You know, that's the third Titan in animation. You got Spider-Verse, The Incredibles, and Spirited Away. You know, I'm not gonna say it's not my favorite Miyazaki film. The Boy and the Heron is my personal favorite, but it is the best Miyazaki film, and I'm not gonna say it's not even close, because there are definitely really good ones like Boy and the Heron, like Princess Mononoke, but Spirited Away it's next level, let's be honest. And for our final year, 2000, my favorite film was Requiem for a Dream, and I did want to talk about this one a little bit. It's a very interesting film. It's about addiction, like drug addiction, but I was thinking about it the other day, and I get criticism that it's almost too stylized. You know, Darren Aronofsky tends to go for in this film, goes for a very chaotic directing and a very chaotic editing style. You know, I think it has 3 times the amount of cuts as a normal film does, just to kind of imbue that kind of the feeling of a rush within people who take drugs, but also kind of the withdrawal and the setbacks. But it is one of the most disturbing, hard to watch films that isn't like a horror film, and it's effective. And what I think the best film from this year is Gladiator with Russell Crowe. Not much to say about him. It's aged really well, especially the score from Hans Zimmer has aged well, which I noticed. But Russell Crowe's performance is iconic, amazing, not much else to say. So I won't bore you anymore. I'll put the rankings on screen here of what I think are the best 25 films from each year. I wasn't going to rank my favorites because who really gives a fuck, but this is my ranking of what I think the best ones are in order of, best to worst. To end this off, I just wanted to give this quick little video. I do plan on making, a return to form with, gaming content. There's a Bone Lab campaign mod that I maybe want to make a video about. So stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching.